Hello from Mindset Daily, wishing you a day full of health, peace, and happiness. Thank you for watching the Mindset Daily channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe to support us. Thank you so much. What if your life was never a coincidence, but part of a design more intentional than you ever imagined? What if every challenge you faced, every twist in the road, was preparing you for something far greater than you could see right now? And what if the silence, the confusion, and even the waiting were all part of God's perfect plan to lead you closer to your true purpose? God has a plan for every life, including yours. Long before you ever took your first breath, before your heart began to beat in your mother's womb, God knew you. He saw your future in full detail, the trials you would encounter, the victories you would celebrate, and the exact purpose for which you were created. You're not a random product of chance or a cosmic accident. Though the world may insist that life is nothing more than a series of random events, God's word says otherwise. It boldly declares that you were fearfully and wonderfully made, intentionally crafted by the hands of the Creator Himself, with a divine assignment written into the blueprint of your soul. Yet, let's be honest, there are moments when that truth feels distant. Maybe you're in the middle of a storm right now. Perhaps you're wrestling with disappointment, facing loss, or dealing with confusion that clouds your direction. In those times, it's easy to question whether God is truly guiding your steps. But Scripture reminds us that His ways are higher than ours, and His thoughts beyond our own. What we see in this moment is only a fraction of the masterpiece He is painting with our lives. God's plan is rarely revealed all at once. He doesn't always provide the full picture up front. Instead, He teaches us to walk by faith, not by sight. Just as He called Abraham, without a map, without a destination, He often calls us to simply trust. Abraham didn't know where he was going, but he knew who was leading him. And that was enough. In the same way, God is calling you to trust Him even when the path ahead is unclear. Sometimes His plan involves separation, removing certain people from your life, not to punish you, but to prepare you. Not everyone is meant to walk with you into your next chapter. Some relationships, no matter how meaningful they once were, aren't part of where God is taking you next. But what happens when that separation feels painful? When walking by faith feels like walking alone? Let's explore that next. Sometimes, the hardest part of trusting God's plan is accepting the change it brings, especially when that change involves people we once held close. Some relationships were meant only for a season. They may have served a purpose, provided companionship, or even brought growth for a time. But God, in His wisdom, knows when that season is over. When He begins to call you forward, He may also begin to remove distractions, unhealthy influences, or connections that would hold you back from deeper spiritual growth. Not everyone is meant to walk with you into the next chapter, and letting go isn't always a punishment, it's preparation. This is why trusting God's plan demands obedience. It's not passive acceptance, but an active surrender. It means laying down your desires, releasing certain friendships, letting go of your own ambitions, and even stepping away from what feels comfortable, all for the sake of something greater. Something God has already prepared, even if you don't fully understand it yet. For many, surrender is a struggle. Why? Because surrender often leads into the unknown. It means stepping into spaces where clarity isn't guaranteed. But God's plan is never to destroy. It's always to build, to restore, to lead you into hope and purpose. As Jeremiah 29 verse 11 reminds us, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." That promise still stands, even when life feels unpredictable. Even when doors close and paths shift, God is working behind the scenes. He's aligning opportunities, orchestrating divine connections, and opening doors that no one else can touch. What seems uncertain to you is already clear to Him. But here's where many of us stumble. We create our own plans. We build timelines. We set expectations and imagine how life should look. And when reality doesn't match our vision, we become frustrated, anxious, or disheartened. Yet Proverbs gently reminds us, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. God's timing is perfect, even when it disrupts your schedule. What looks like a delay might actually be divine protection. What feels like rejection could be sacred redirection. He knows what's best for you, and His plan is always working. Not sometimes, not occasionally, but always for your good. So how do we keep walking forward in faith when we can't see the full path? Let's continue and find out. As we just reflected, trusting God's timing and direction, especially when it interrupts our own plans, is an act of deep surrender. But what does it look like to keep walking in faith when life feels uncertain? It begins with rest, not the kind that comes from sleep or routine, but a spiritual rest, a quiet confidence in the truth that God will never leave you nor forsake you. When you surrender your plans to Him, you aren't giving up control. You're placing your life in the hands of the one who already holds everything together. That's not loss. That's divine security. Life is a journey made up of seasons, each one marked by change. People come and go. Some are meant to walk with us for a lifetime, while others are only there for a brief but meaningful chapter. And that's where the challenge often comes. It can be incredibly difficult to let go, especially when deep bonds have been formed. Whether it's a friendship, a partnership, or even a relationship that once felt essential, letting go is never easy. Yet one of the most vital lessons we must learn is this. Not everyone who starts the journey with you is meant to finish it with you. There will be moments when God removes certain individuals from your life. Not because they're bad people, but because their purpose in your story has been fulfilled. Their chapter in your life was never meant to be the whole book. And while that truth may bring peace later, in the moment, it often brings pain. You might find yourself asking, why did this person walk away? Why did that friendship fall apart? Why did this relationship end when I gave it so much? But God sees what you cannot. He knows the hearts of people, their motives, their direction. And most importantly, He knows the path your life is meant to take. Sometimes, separation isn't about loss. It's about divine positioning. He's clearing the path to take you somewhere new, somewhere greater. Take the story of Abraham and Lot. They began their journey together, united by family and shared history. But a time came when they had to part ways. Their callings were different. Their assignments diverged. God's plan for Abraham required separation. Had Abraham insisted on keeping Lot close, he might have delayed the very blessing God had already prepared for him. In the same way, when God is calling you to a new level, whether in purpose, maturity, or direction, not everyone can come with you. And that's not rejection, that's alignment. So how do we handle those moments of separation with grace? How do we move forward without bitterness or fear? Let's walk into that truth next. As we just saw through the story of Abraham and Lot, there comes a time when separation is necessary for elevation. When God calls you higher, not everyone can come with you. And learning to release can be one of the greatest acts of trust. Some people are only assigned to a specific stage of your life. They may walk beside you for a while, serve a purpose in your development, or bring you comfort in a particular season. But when that stage is complete, you must be willing to move forward, even if it means moving forward without them. Holding on to relationships that God has already released you from can become a weight. It slows your growth, delays your purpose, and dims the clarity of where God is leading you. Often, we hold on out of fear of being alone, fear of letting go of what's familiar, or fear of stepping into the unknown. But faith calls us out of fear and into trust. Trust that God knows what He's doing. Trust that if someone has exited your life, it's for a reason. Even if you don't understand it yet, trust that in due time, He will bring the right people with the right heart to walk the next part of your journey with you. Some people leave because they were never meant to stay. Others leave because their role was temporary, to teach you something, to sharpen your character, to shift your perspective. And some are removed by God as a form of protection, shielding you from things you cannot yet see. Whatever the reason, don't let the loss of one relationship make you question God's plan. Don't let a closed door blind you to the new ones He's about to open. If you cling too tightly to the past, you'll miss the future He's already prepared. Even Jesus, during His time on earth, experienced people walking away. Many followed Him at first, drawn by the miracles, the hope, and the teaching. But when the cost of following grew heavy, when it required surrender, they turned back. Even some of His closest disciples struggled. Peter denied Him. Judas betrayed Him. Others scattered when fear came close. But Jesus didn't chase those who left. He didn't abandon His mission to plead for their return. He remained focused on the Father's will, knowing that what God had called Him to do was greater than any temporary loss. In the same way, you must not allow the departure of people, no matter how painful, to distract you from your divine assignment. Seasons change, friendships shift, relationships evolve. But God, let's continue to see what happens when we keep our eyes on Him instead of what's behind us. As we just reflected, people may leave, seasons may shift, and relationships may change, but God remains the same. Through every high and low, He is the unshakable foundation, the one constant who will never leave you nor forsake you. As you continue walking in His will, you'll begin to see that nothing, absolutely nothing, is wasted. Every person who walked away, every friendship that drifted, every door that unexpectedly closed, they were all part of something much bigger than you could see in a moment. Even in times of loss, God is still in control. There are seasons in life when change comes uninvited. A relationship ends. A trusted friend grows distant. A door you thought would open slams shut without warning. In those moments, it's easy to feel disoriented, maybe even heartbroken. You might ask yourself, why did this happen? Why didn't that work out? What went wrong with someone I trusted so deeply? But here's a truth you must hold on to. When God removes someone from your life, it's not because He wants to hurt you. It's because He's protecting you. God sees beyond appearances. While we may be drawn in by charm, loyalty, or shared history, God sees what's beneath the surface. He knows the intentions of the heart. He sees the full picture, the future we cannot yet comprehend. Someone who looks like they belong in your future may, in reality, become a weight, a distraction, or even a danger to your destiny. That's why God sometimes closes doors you wanted to walk through. That's why He separates you from people you thought would be there forever. What feels like rejection is often divine protection. What looks like a painful loss is really a shield from something greater, something you were never meant to carry. We see this time and again throughout Scripture. When King Saul was rejected by God, the prophet Samuel mourned deeply. He grieved over someone he had once anointed, someone he had walked with in faith. But God spoke directly to Samuel and asked, "How long will you mourn for what I have rejected?" That question echoes into our lives today. How many times have we clung to something God already released us from? How long have we mourned over doors God has already closed? Sometimes, healing begins when we're willing to let go of what God has let go of. So how do we do that? How do we release with faith and move forward in peace? Let's continue and find out together. As we just reflected through Samuel's story, holding on to what God has already released can keep us stuck in grief, questioning, and confusion. But what if the very loss you're mourning is the evidence of God's mercy at work? What we often fail to recognize is that when God removes someone or something from our lives, it's not to leave us empty. It's to make room for something better. There are moments when relationships appear ideal on the outside. They may feel safe, familiar, and deeply connected. But God sees beyond appearances. He sees what's coming long before we do. You might believe a friend or partner is meant to walk with you forever. But God knows if that person will one day betray your trust, pull you off course, or become a source of spiritual confusion. He sees whether their presence will strengthen your calling or slowly weaken your resolve. And in His mercy, He steps in, not to break your heart, but to protect it from something far more painful down the road. The hardest part about divine protection is that it doesn't always look like protection in the moment. Sometimes it looks like heartbreak. Sometimes it feels like disappointment or silence. You may have prayed desperately for a relationship to be restored, for a door to reopen, for a person to stay. And yet God remained quiet, or even said no. But what if that unanswered prayer was the very thing saving you? What if the relationship that didn't work out was God's way of sparing you from years of heartbreak, distraction, or even spiritual harm? What if the door that closed was never meant to be walked through in the first place? When someone leaves your life, our instinct is to ask why. But maybe the better question is, Lord, what are you protecting me from? Instead of striving to hold on to what's gone, we must learn to trust in the wisdom of the one who sees it all. He is the good shepherd. He doesn't just lead us to green pastures. He also leads us away from cliffs we cannot see. If He blocks a path, it's not out of cruelty. It's because He knows what danger lies ahead, and He loves you too much to let you walk blindly into it. Even Jesus, during His time on earth, experienced separation and betrayal. He knew what it was like to be left, misunderstood, and hurt. Let's continue to see what His example teaches us in those moments. As we just reflected, even Jesus, who loved perfectly and walked in divine wisdom, experienced betrayal and separation. His story reminds us that some departures are necessary for destiny. Not everyone who walks with you is meant to stay with you. Judas, for example, was close to Jesus. He followed Him, ate with Him, and witnessed His miracles. But proximity doesn't equal loyalty. Though Judas walked beside Jesus, his heart was not aligned with God's will. Had Jesus tried to hold on to Judas or prevent what was already set in motion, he would have interfered with the very purpose God had ordained. Instead, He allowed Judas to leave, knowing that even betrayal would be used to fulfill the plan. In the same way, when people walk away from your life, no matter how close they once were, don't chase after them. Don't fight to keep what God is intentionally removing. What looks like loss is often divine protection in disguise. That friendship, that relationship, that opportunity you thought you needed. What if it was actually the thing holding you back from stepping fully into your purpose? God sees the whole path. He knows what will entangle you, delay you, or distract you from what He's called you to do. So when He removes something, it's not punishment, it's preparation. Trusting Him means believing that every release, every closed door, every goodbye is working for your good. Even when it's painful, even when it doesn't make sense, even when you feel abandoned. Letting go is one of the most difficult things we're asked to do. Whether it's a friendship, a career opportunity, a personal dream, or a season of life we've grown attached to. Releasing something you once held dear never comes easy. The human heart craves stability. We cling to what's familiar, what's safe, what makes sense. And yet, again and again, God calls us to surrender. Faith isn't just trusting God when everything is falling into place. Real faith is trusting Him when He asks you to release something you never imagined letting go of. It's trusting that His plan is better, even when it interrupts yours. So how do we find peace in the process of release? Let's turn the page and explore how surrender becomes the gateway to greater strength. Letting go, especially when the outcome is unclear, calls for a level of trust that stretches us. As we just considered, faith is not simply clinging to comfort. It's surrendering even when you don't understand. Surrender means laying down your desires, your timelines, your expectations, and even your attachments. It means trusting that while you can only see one small thread of the story, God sees the entire tapestry. One of the most powerful illustrations of this kind of surrender is found in the life of Abraham. God had promised Abraham that he would become the father of many nations. And after years of waiting, after enduring doubt, delay, and disappointment, that promise finally became a reality in the form of his beloved son, Isaac. Isaac was more than just a child. He was the embodiment of God's promise. But then came the unthinkable. God asked Abraham to take Isaac to the mountain and offer him as a sacrifice. Imagine the weight of that request. After years of waiting, after holding the promise in his arms, now God was asking him to place it on the altar. It must have seemed confusing, even heartbreaking. Yet Abraham didn't argue, didn't resist. He obeyed. Step by step, he climbed the mountain, not with full understanding, but with full trust. And in the final moment, just before the sacrifice, God intervened. A ram was caught in the thicket, a divine provision. It became clear that God never intended to take Isaac away. What he truly desired was Abraham's heart, his obedience, his willingness to surrender. This story holds a powerful truth. Sometimes, God asks us to let go, not to remove something permanently, but to test our trust. Will we cling out of fear, or will we open our hands in faith? Other times, the release is not a test, it's a transition. God calls us to let go because he has something better ahead, something we couldn't receive while still holding on to what's behind. But the test remains the same. Will you trust me? Letting go is never easy because it pushes us into the unknown. It forces us to loosen our grip on what's familiar and step out where the road isn't clear. Peter faced this challenge firsthand. When Jesus called him to step out of the boat and walk on water, he had a choice to make. Let's look at how that moment reveals the heart of faith in action. Just as Peter stepped out in faith toward Jesus, we're reminded that faith doesn't always mean clarity. It means focus. And when our focus shifts, fear creeps in. As long as Peter kept his eyes fixed on Jesus, he did the impossible. He walked on water. But the moment his gaze shifted to the wind and the waves, the chaos around him began to drown out his trust, and he started to sink. That is exactly what happens when we try to hold on to what God is asking us to release. The fear of the unknown becomes louder than our faith in the one who's guiding us. Often, the things we cling to are rooted in fear. Fear of being alone, fear of failure, fear that if we let go, nothing better will come. But God hasn't called us to live in fear. His word tells us in 2 Timothy 1 verse 7 that he has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, of love, and of a sound mind. When God asks you to release something, whether it's a relationship, a plan, a position, or even a dream, he's not leading you toward loss. He's leading you into purpose. He's not taking something away to punish you. He's creating space for something greater, something beyond what you could ask for or even imagine. Letting go doesn't mean failure. It doesn't mean you're giving up. It means you're surrendering. It means you're trusting that God's plan is higher, deeper, and more complete than your own. It means you're choosing faith over fear, obedience over comfort, and trust over control. And it's in that moment of surrender, when you release what you were never meant to carry, that God moves. His power is revealed not in our clinging, but in our releasing. Obedience becomes the key that unlocks blessing. From the very beginning, God has called his people to follow his voice, to walk in his ways, and to trust his instructions. And throughout Scripture, we see a consistent truth. When people chose obedience, they stepped into God's favor, his provision, and his protection. But when they resisted, when they chose their own way, they met unnecessary struggle, delay, and heartache. Obedience is not about rigid rules or religious routine. It's about trust. It's about aligning our lives with God's perfect will so we can walk in the fullness of what He's prepared. Yet, too often, people treat obedience like a menu, picking and choosing which parts of God's Word to follow, as if some commands are optional. But here's the truth. Partial obedience is still disobedience. Let's continue and uncover why full obedience is the foundation of an unshakable faith. As we saw earlier, partial obedience is still disobedience. Now let's go deeper into why full, unwavering obedience is the gateway to the life God has prepared for us. When God speaks, He expects us to respond, not with hesitation, not with delay, but with faith. Even when His instructions are unclear, even when they challenge our comfort or stretch our understanding, obedience is always the path that leads to greater blessings. One of the most powerful examples of this is found in the life of Abraham. When God called Abraham to leave everything familiar, his home, his people, his land, He didn't give him a map or a detailed explanation. He simply said, "Go." Abraham could have clung to his comfort zone. He could have rationalized, questioned, or refused. But he chose to trust. He obeyed, and because of that faith, God made him the father of many nations. Abraham's blessings were the direct result of his obedience. His willingness to follow God without knowing every step ahead opened the door to a legacy that would impact generations. The same principle is true for us. When we walk in obedience, we invite God's favor to cover every step of the journey. But make no mistake, obedience is rarely easy. It often requires deep sacrifice. It may call you to release relationships, pass up tempting opportunities, or make decisions that don't make sense to those around you. Yet every time you choose obedience, you're placing yourself in perfect alignment with God's will. And there is no safer or more powerful place to be. Take Peter, for example. After a night of fruitless labor, he was tired, frustrated, and ready to give up. Then Jesus told him to cast his net one more time. Logic told him it was pointless. Experience told him it wouldn't work. But Peter obeyed, and in that moment of obedience, a miracle was unleashed. His nets came back overflowing with fish. The blessing was on the other side of obedience. Many people pray for blessings, but miss the critical truth. Blessings follow obedience. They ask God for more, but aren't faithful with what they already have. They pray for new doors to open while ignoring the ones He's already unlocked. They cry out for breakthroughs, but fail to recognize that breakthrough begins with a simple yes. Let's continue by uncovering how obedience positions us to experience the miraculous. Obedience, as we've seen, is the doorway to divine blessing. But disobedience, even when delayed, carries its own weight. Let's now explore the reality of what happens when we hesitate instead of trust. God honors those who respond immediately to His voice. He delights in those who follow Him with wholehearted trust, even when the path makes no sense to the human mind. Faith is not proven when everything is clear. Faith is proven when we take a step even while the road ahead is foggy. But disobedience has consequences. From the very beginning, this truth has been clear. When Adam and Eve chose to disobey God's instruction, they forfeited the paradise He had lovingly prepared for them. Jonah, when he ran from his divine assignment, found himself in the belly of a great fish, isolated, broken, and desperate. And the Israelites, after being miraculously delivered from Egypt, wandered the wilderness for 40 long years, all because they refused to trust and obey God's instructions. What could have been an 11-day journey turned into a generational delay. Delayed obedience is still disobedience, and every act of disobedience carries a cost. Yet in all of this, we see the mercy of God shine through. Even when we fail, Even when we fall short, God does not turn away in anger. He extends grace. He offers second chances. He is not seeking perfection. He is seeking a willing heart, a heart that says, "Yes, Lord," even after getting it wrong the first time. When you obey, even in the small things, you are sowing seeds of faith that God will honor. You are choosing alignment with His purpose rather than chasing your own agenda. You are walking a path that leads to fulfillment, peace, and divine favor. And just like growth in nature, spiritual growth is not instantaneous. It's a journey, slow, intentional, and often uncomfortable. No one stumbles into maturity by accident. It comes through seasons of testing, moments of surrender, and a continual willingness to be shaped by God. Jesus used the imagery of gardening to describe this process. In John 15, verse 2, He said, "Every branch that bears fruit He prunes, that it may bear more fruit." This pruning is not punishment, it is preparation. And just like a skilled gardener knows exactly what to trim for a plant to thrive, God knows what to remove in our lives to help us grow stronger and more fruitful. In the next part, we'll explore how pruning, though painful, becomes the very tool God uses to shape us into who we were meant to be. As we reflected on God's pruning process in John 15, verse 2, we begin to understand that even fruitful lives are not exempt from refinement. In fact, pruning is proof that God is preparing us for more. Jesus said that every branch that bears fruit must be pruned so it can produce even more. This reveals something profound. Even when you're growing, even when you're aligned with God's will, He may still cut things away. Not as punishment, but as preparation. He prunes the distractions, trims away unhealthy dependencies, and removes anything that hinders our spiritual development. It's not about loss. It's about making space for greater fruit. The reality of pruning can be painful. Sometimes it means losing relationships that once brought comfort but no longer align with your calling. Sometimes it looks like closed doors, missed opportunities, or stripped away routines that once made you feel secure. In those moments, it's easy to feel like you're going backward, but the truth is you're being positioned for something far greater than you imagined. Think of a tree in the hands of a skilled gardener. The tree doesn't resist the shears. It yields, trusting that what is removed will ultimately lead to stronger growth. That's the posture we must take, trusting that God, in His wisdom, is making space for new fruit, more vibrant, more lasting, more aligned with our purpose. And this process takes time. Growth does not happen overnight. When a branch is pruned, it doesn't bear fruit immediately. It must rest, recover, and then regenerate. Likewise, we often feel discouraged in the waiting, wondering why we haven't yet seen the breakthrough, why the trial persists, or why spiritual growth feels so slow. But just because you don't see movement doesn't mean God isn't working. Beneath the surface, He is strengthening your foundation, deepening your faith, and readying you for the next season. Sometimes, pruning comes disguised as hardship. God allows trials not to harm us, but to refine us, to burn away pride, selfishness, fear, or doubt. It is in those moments that our faith is sharpened and our hearts are purified. Next, we'll explore how these trials, while difficult, are often the very catalyst for transformation and breakthrough. As we explored how pruning shapes us for greater fruitfulness, we now turn to an even deeper truth. Our hardships are not here to destroy us. They are here to transform us. The trials you face are not designed to break you down, but to build you up, to shape your character, to stretch your faith, and to anchor your dependence fully on God. Just as gold must pass through fire to be refined, your spirit is refined in the fires of adversity. These moments of testing bring to the surface what lies within us. They expose pride, fear, impatience, things we often don't see until we're under pressure. But they also reveal hidden strength, resilience, and a deeper reliance on God. Without challenges, our spiritual muscles weaken. We grow comfortable, complacent, and stagnant. But when we embrace the process, when we allow ourselves to be molded through difficulty, we emerge stronger, wiser, and more prepared to carry the weight of what God has prepared for us. One of the most powerful stories of spiritual pruning is the story of Joseph. God had incredible plans for his life, but before Joseph could step into that divine destiny, he had to walk through a painful refining process. He was betrayed by his own brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused, and imprisoned for years. To the outside world, it looked like his life was falling apart. But behind the scenes, God was working with precision, shaping Joseph's heart, building his character, and preparing him for a position of great influence. Every betrayal, every injustice, every delay was not a detour. It was divine preparation. And when the appointed time came, Joseph was not only ready to step into leadership, he was ready to steward it with grace and humility. Had he skipped the process, he would not have been prepared for the blessing. That's the essence of spiritual pruning. It's not about God taking from you. It's about him clearing the way for something far greater. He removes what hinders so you can grow in what heals. He cuts away fear, doubt, and pride so your roots can grow deeper into faith. Yes, the process can be painful, but it always leads to something better, something richer. When you surrender to it, you emerge more fruitful, more focused, and more aligned with your divine purpose. Now, let's reflect on one of the hardest parts of this process, waiting. Because pruning is not only about what is cut away, but also about what we must patiently endure before the next season begins. After understanding how pruning shapes us for purpose, we must now face another refining tool in God's hands, waiting. It's not just about what's cut away, but also about what we must endure in faith. There are seasons in life when you're yearning for a clear answer, hoping for a breakthrough, or holding tightly to a promise God made. But in a world obsessed with speed, where instant results are expected and delays feel like disappointments, waiting can test your patience like nothing else. Still, God doesn't follow human timelines. His ways are higher, and his timing is always perfect, though it rarely matches our own. Waiting on God is not passive. It is an active expression of faith and surrender. It means trusting that he sees what we cannot, that he is orchestrating every detail according to a divine plan far beyond our comprehension. Scripture is filled with reminders of this truth, stories of people who waited long, but were never forgotten. Take Abraham and Sarah. They were promised a child, a legacy that would birth nations. But as the years passed and no child came, doubt crept in. In their impatience, they tried to fulfill God's promise their own way, and the result brought more pain than peace. Had they waited in trust, they would have avoided the consequences of their haste. How many of us fall into the same pattern, rushing ahead of God, try to open doors he has not yet unlocked? Impatience can lead to regrets we were never meant to carry. When we move outside of his timing, we invite unnecessary struggle. But when we wait on him, the blessings that come are not only richer, they are lasting. God's timing is not only about when something happens, but also about who you become in the process. Sometimes the delay isn't about the blessing. It's about preparing you to carry it. A door opened too soon might overwhelm you. A promotion given too early may crush you. A relationship formed prematurely could distract you from your calling. God sees the entire picture. He knows when you're truly ready for the next step. So what may feel like a frustrating delay is often his loving protection, keeping you from walking into something you weren't built to sustain yet. Let's explore what happens in the waiting and how it shapes your character for what's coming next. As we reflect on God's perfect timing, we must also understand what happens within us during the wait. Because waiting isn't just about what God is doing around you, but what He's building in you. In seasons of waiting, God is shaping your character, strengthening your faith, and preparing you to carry the weight of what's coming next. Before a door opens, He ensures that you're ready to walk through it. That preparation often happens in the unseen, slow days of trusting and surrendering. Trusting God's timing requires more than patience. It requires releasing control. As humans, we crave certainty. We want timelines, guarantees, and a clear roadmap. But faith doesn't demand full understanding. It simply demands trust in the one who understands it all. Even Jesus, during His time on earth, moved with divine timing. He never rushed, never acted impulsively. When Lazarus became ill, Jesus didn't immediately run to heal him, though He loved him deeply. He waited, and in that waiting, a greater miracle unfolded. Lazarus wasn't just healed, he was raised from the dead. What seemed like a delay was actually a setup for resurrection power. What looked like silence was divine strategy. That's the mystery of God's timing. It may feel like He's late, but He's always exactly on time. His delays are not denials. They are often designed to reveal His greater glory. But let's be clear, waiting on God doesn't mean you sit back and do nothing. It means staying faithful where you are. Just like Joseph, sold into slavery, imprisoned without cause. He didn't grow bitter or idle. He worked with excellence, honored God, and served diligently. And when the time was right, God promoted him from the prison to the palace. Your waiting season is not wasted. God is using it to develop your spiritual muscles, refine your character, and position you for something far greater than you expect. One of the hardest parts of waiting? Watching others walk into their blessings while you're still praying for yours. It's tempting to compare, to question why someone else's door is opening while yours remains shut. But comparison is the thief of purpose. Let's explore that truth next. When you find yourself in the waiting room of life, watching others walk into their blessings, it can stir up a quiet ache inside. You might wonder, why not me? Why now for them, but not yet for me? But here's the truth you must hold on to. God's plan for you is uniquely designed. Just because someone else is stepping into their season doesn't mean God has forgotten yours. He's not withholding blessings out of delay or disapproval. He's orchestrating every detail with divine precision. What He has prepared for you will come, not a moment too early or too late. It will arrive in the right way, at the right time, shaped perfectly for your life and no one else's. Trusting God's timing is more than passive waiting. It's active surrender. It means laying down your own deadlines, releasing your need for immediate results, and choosing to rest in the assurance that He is in control. It means believing that even when the door seems shut, the ground seems still, and progress seems invisible. God is still moving. He's working behind the scenes, aligning people, opportunities, and circumstances in ways you can't yet see. His ways are higher. His vision is eternal. And His plan weaves every delay, every disappointment, every detour into something meaningful. Though the journey may lead through pruning, through letting go, and through hard seasons, each part is a vital thread in the tapestry of His purpose. Your obedience opens the door to His blessings. Your trust anchors you in peace that surpasses understanding. Yes, growth comes with challenge, but God does not prune to punish. He prunes to promote. He does not delay to deny. He delays to develop. Every test of faith, every moment of uncertainty is shaping you into someone who can carry the weight of the calling ahead. So no matter where you are right now, still waiting, still growing, still hoping, remember, God is always working, always faithful, and always leading you towards something greater than you imagined. May you walk forward today with peace in your heart, faith in your step, and confidence that your time is coming. Wishing you strength, joy, and unwavering hope. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more uplifting content. Stay blessed and see you in the next video.